pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Supervisor Locke, application.
We remember to thank our Creator for all that we are and all that we have. Please help to guide us through the tough decisions we have to make today. Amen.
Okay, we'll resume our deliberation of the budget. Mr. Harris will proceed as soon as he finds his glasses.
The next section will be covered as corporate counsel. That budget starts on page 91. That department has 4 full-time employees, total of 4 employees. It is on.
Pardon? We're on page 82, and he's explaining the Corporation Council.
Good. Yeah, we're doing the corporate council. The significant changes in corporation council are on page 95. Probably the most significant thing on there is that there should be additional dollars for outside legal services. And John Bodner is here to take any questions.
There are no questions. Go to the next page.
Were you going to give the public a chance?
Pardon?
Were you going to give the public a chance to comment? Did we do that?
Okay. Is there anybody from the public that would like to comment on anything on the agenda today? Now is your chance. Yes. You have to state your name and address.
Good morning. I'm Mary Shepherd, 1036 Grove Street in Oshkosh. And I'm here today as the co-president of Winnebago County Master Gardeners. And before you get into the serious discussion about numbers, I have some good numbers that I wanted to share with you. But more than that, I wanted to thank all of you for your support for the horticultural programs in Winnebago County. Master Gardeners is aligned with and sponsored by UW Extension, and we are charged with working on horticulture education and community service in the county. We have 120 members, and they provided 7,700 hours of service to the community in the areas of horticulture and environmental stewardship. Some of the projects, and I know you're very busy, I'm not going to talk long, but I wanted to share how broadly across the county we work. We work at the Menasha Community Gardens at UW-Fox. We work at the Octagon House in Neenah doing historical garden restoration. We work at the Omro Library helping them update and seriously straighten out some old landscaping. We work now at the Winchester Historical Society, again helping that community restore the historical gardens. Excuse me. We work at the Neenah Library, and that's a new project for us. We work to control invasive species throughout the county. We work on 4 projects at Parkview, including a prairie, a cutting garden, a vegetable garden, and flower arranging for the residents. We have shared harvest, where we try to provide additional resources to the community in terms of food. We have a booth at the farm market where we provide ongoing community education. We have plant health advisors where we assist Extension in solving community problems. And we had 275 calls this year, all of which were resolved. And it was interesting that this is the most tree questions we've ever had. almost half of them, and you can understand why. We're seeing drought-stressed trees, and everybody's worried about emerald ash borer. I don't want to take any more of your time, but I really wanted to take a minute to thank you for all of your support and just to give you a feeling for what we've accomplished with that support this year. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
The next section is county clerk. It starts on page 100.
I never got an ovation when I walked in.
The county clerk has 3 full-time employees and 1 part-time employee, the same as last year. And the summary of significant changes is on page 105.
Supervisor Norton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sue, on changes in the capital for the voting machine, is that just in the courthouse, or are those voting machines throughout the county on election day?
That will be for a new elections machine for us. And then the software and the new program that we'll have to purchase so that we can coordinate the voting systems countywide. So it will be, we talked to the other municipalities, for those of you that might remember back in the early 90s when we first purchased this voting equipment, the county did they funded for the municipalities their voting equipment, and then they had a 2-year payback to the county. I spoke with the municipalities about it a couple of times over the last few years, and they've been budgeting all along for new equipment, so they didn't want the county to do any funding for them. So what you're seeing would be strictly for us to get a couple of pieces of equipment, the new software, and we'd have to get a new server.
Supervisor Eisen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's a perennial comment, but I would like to share with the fellow supervisors commendation for the county clerk and operating this office with 3 full-time and 1 part-time employee. It's just amazing to me the amount of ground business that's covered by the county clerk and how efficient that office has been run. I want to commend and thank the staff and the county clerk. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead.
The next budget section is human resources and payroll on page 128.
Mark, can you speak a little bit more to the mic, please?
It was off. The next section is human resources and payroll on page 128. The Human Resource Department continues to have 7 full-time and 2 part-time positions. And I should probably mention that those part-time positions also serve as the reception area for the administrative building. So they serve not just human resources, but the county as a whole.
Okay, next one.
There is a separate section for employee health and wellness.
Supervisor Eisen.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I was just going to ask Mr. Harris the update, the latest on the contracting for the healthcare clinic and for that type of program. Then you did mention wellness, so I will
Sure.
listen.
My understanding is it's going quite well and that the details are being resolved, but Mike Collard is in the back and can answer that more accurately.
In terms of the contracting, sir, the final contracts are being prepared. I think the lawyers pretty well have it worked out, and I do expect the clinic to be on the board agenda for, I think it's the November 11th meeting, if I have the date right. But the site had to be changed because of problems with the landlord, but the new site seems to be going very well, and plans are being drawn up for the remodeling, and I said we do expect to be in business on that, or at least prepared to bring it to the board next meeting. Also, I should mention the county's health insurer has been involved in those meetings and is still committed to picking up the entire cost of the clinic, so there won't be any direct expense to the clinic for either startup or operating costs for the clinic in its first year at least of operation.
There's also a separate section on workers' compensation fund on page 143.
And that's, could you give a brief explanation? That's self-funded? I'll ask Mike.
Yeah.
Yes, that's correct. We have insurance to cover only the very large claims, but it's generally self-funded.
Supervisor Eisen?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Now that we have the Human Resources Director here and the County Executive, I would like to refer back to page 48 to the self-funded health insurance.
What page did you say?
48. 48. The self-funded health insurance projects a ending balance of $3,052,226. One question I have is, does that include the interest that would accumulate on the money in the course of the year, or is that just the raw number?
Mr. Orenstein is indicating that interest earned on that money stays in that account.
Okay, so that includes the interest, and that also discounts that $251,996, which is held as a contingency for the expense of the health insurance that's apportioned to the different departments. Is that, am I reading that correctly?
Not exactly a contingency, but otherwise you're correct. The $251,000 is an amount budgeted to be taken out of the fund to be used to subsidize premiums, so that the premiums charged departments would stay flat and the same as were charged in the 2014 budget, just for budgeting purposes. So we'd be absorbing that little bit of extra increase through the fund balance. The remaining portion of the fund balance, the objective is to keep it in place for at least a couple of more years, because if we do end up going back to self-insured on health insurance, we'll need that fund balance to start off.
Okay, so that, it's a done deal with that $251,000. It's not a contingency. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'd like to comment that with the self-insurance fund, we anticipate at some point that we'll go back to being self-insured because sometimes there's savings available for doing that. Now, we've looked into that the last 2 years, and the savings didn't warrant to switch back. But we still anticipate at some point in time the county will be back to being self-insured. And of course, the big problem with doing that is that you have to have a pool of money available for claims when you switch over. So until we reach some point that we're certain that we won't switch back to self-insured, we're reluctant to close that account out to the general fund.
I would like to further refer to page 148 under the self-funded health insurance topic. where it says 2,000.
Well, can we wait until till the executive gets up to that one and then push your button and talk? I got criticized last night because I'm letting us jump all over the place. So we'll let him go forward when he goes to that page. He's on page 144 now. He's coming up pretty quick.
Thank you.
So where we left off
144.
was with the workers' compensation insurance.
Right.
And unless there's more questions there, then the very next item that we go to is the self-funded health insurance. And that starts on page 148. And the summary of changes is on page 149.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Am I on?
You're on.
Okay. Oh! We're under the title 2015 budget. If you read that paragraph, the implication is that that expense is a contingency. It may be when the adopted budget is published that would be adjusted to remove the contingency, because it says $251,998 from the fund balance as a contingency in case costs are higher. What I heard the Human Resources Director say is that it's going to happen. It's used as a stability rather than as a contingency.
Go ahead, Mike.
Yes, at the time the budgets were prepared, we didn't have the final health insurance premium quotes yet. So we budgeted under the assumption that the health insurance premiums would go up about 8%, which matches what was in the 2014 budget, since our actual premiums were well under budget for the current year. So we assumed that the premiums would go up 8%. We put that in to make sure if the premiums went up 10%, we'd have the difference covered. Since that was prepared, we do have the final quotes, and the actual premium numbers are at the 10%. So it's gone from being a contingency to really being fact. We're saving some money in some other aspects of the health plan, but that money will be used for the actual premiums.
Thank you. I'm reading the budget correctly.
I think the next section is a self-funded dental insurance.
Mike, you had your button on before when I, okay. Go ahead.
Self-funded dental insurance, the summary of significant changes on page 154. After that comes the Finance Department. Chuck Ornstein is here to answer any questions. That budget starts on page 158. The Finance Department has 6 full-time employees, the same as last year. And the summary of significant changes is on page 164. Chuck also covers the general services area. General services has 1 full-time employee for 2015, down 1 employee from where it was in 2014.
I want to go back to his finance pages for the finance director. Are we looking to do any auditing at all? Or am I missing something somewhere? Or?
Yes.
Just a minute. Go ahead.
I did include $10,000 in the budget to contract to have some internal audit work done. We haven't done any in many years, and we need to get back to that. I don't know that it would justify a full-time person, so at this point I want to contract it out, see if there's enough work. But Well, just to see how much time it's going to take to do some each year.
Okay, thank you.
It's always wise to periodically review your cash controls and your internal controls. So periodic audit makes sense. But we do have an audited CAFR prepared every year.
I understand, but it still doesn't hurt for us to do an internal audit.
The next section is general services. That's also under Mr. Orenstein. As I said, that has one full-time employee. Last year it had 2 full-time employees. Some of the mail functions have been outsourced.
Property and liability insurance, 179.
Yeah. Property and liability insurance is on page 179. That's also under the supervision of Mr. Orenstein. The summary of significant changes is on page 181.
Information systems,
Information system starts on page 185. You'll want to refer back to that.
okay, I got it. Mr. Eisen has a question.
Yeah, I would just like to comment on that property and liability insurance account. In the 2006 budget session, prior to the time that I was elected to the board, that particular account was completely overfunded. It was in the range of over $2 million. And I'm very pleased to see through the years how that has been reined in and how well it has been adjusted for our current needs, and that the cost of the premiums for the insurance is there, and the contingency for additional out-of-pocket expenses is available. Thank you.
The next section is information systems.
Mr. Executive, could you go to Education and Culture and Recreation, Chris Knipp for UW Extension? She had asked to come first.
Sure.
Supervisor Knitsky?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can somebody tell me here, how do we choose the audit firm?
Probably an RFP process. You mean to do internal auditing? An RFP, request for proposal. We'll send it to several local accounting firms.
Okay, thank you.
She's on page 443.
There it is. So UW Extension is on page 443. There is an item on a page, adjustments to executive budget proposal, that you should have gotten when you got your book. And a significant change there is an upgrade of a contracted half-time position. It's not in the chart of personnel, but increasing that half-time position to a full-time position. And as you'll recall, with UW Extension, the costs of many employees are split between the University of Wisconsin system and the county. But there's 9 full-time employees, 1 part-time employees. Contracted employees are not in that total.
So it's split 50-50? Chris, could you answer that?
Yes, you can answer that better.
What's the percentages of the split for the state versus the county towards your department?
For the 4 faculty positions, which is our agriculture, 4-H, family living and community development, it's 40% paid by Winnebago County and 60% paid by the university.
Okay. Supervisor Haig.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In regards to last year's budget, there was an amendment to approve an expenditure of $150,000 for construction of a building. Can you bring us up to date on where that building is at?
Currently, the bids are out for the construction of that building. The site has been approved by the city of Oshkosh, and the construction actually is being handled by the Facilities Committee and Mike Elders.
So it hasn't been constructed yet?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So we'll move back into the administrative section.
185.
The information systems starts on page 185. And again, there is a sheet, a separate sheet that you have that will be relevant somewhere in this section when we talk about the technology replacement fund. In 2015, Information Systems is budgeted for 17 full-time employees. That's an increase of 1 full-time employee over last year.
So then, in the front of our book where it says employees, so we're up to 1.5, or how does that read then for total employees that we put on for 2015?
I think it was, I'd have to go back and look, but I think it was 7 full-time and 2 part-time in that introductory section.
Maybe Mike could help us out there.
Yeah, 7 full-time positions and 2 part-time positions, but that's countywide. Do you want Mike to comment on those?
Yeah, I just want to know, are we increasing the total amount of personnel? Somewhere in all my paper here, I see something that we added a half a position, and I'm just questioning. You just mentioned 1 more full-time. I have nothing against it. I'm just curious how many were added.
I think the half-time position we talked about in extension was a contracted position.
Okay.
So it's not a county employee, it's a
Okay.
contracted.
Thank you.
So the summary of changes for information systems is on page 190. And on page 196 is the technology replacement fund. But as I mentioned, there's an updated sheet for the technology replacement fund separate from your book. No? Yeah, there, yeah.
I was just going to
Yeah.
say, let me go look and go again. I saw it somewhere.
You know, it might be helpful if Patty just gave them a real, there's some major changes coming in technology, and a lot of it has to do with contracts with, is it Microsoft? And just a real short explanation that would probably be of benefit to the board.
First, I'll let Supervisor Fari ask a question, and then maybe she'll be answering it anyway. So, go ahead, Mr. Supervisor Fari.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm trying to find my place in the book here, but I believe it stated that their budget is up 12%, correct? And that, oh, here we are. That's because a new position was added and the telephone maintenance contract costs are being charged to this department instead of being allocated. I assume that means the other departments?
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to see a reduction in the other departments?
For that line item.
across the board?
Yes, for that line item, of course.
Yeah,
Not
okay.
necessarily
Good.
for the departmental budgets.
All right, thank you.
Is that right on, Finance Director?
Well, yes, there would be a reduction, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to see a smaller number in the individual departments because the phone expense goes up for other reasons too. So if you look at them, it may not be noticeable.
Well, so you're saying in the other departments, the reduction is not going to be noticeable?
We're talking about telephone charges, and there's multiple components to what makes up telephone expense.
Okay,
That's
I
a
see.
very small portion of it.
All right.
So if other components are up, they might be offsetting a lot of this decrease.
So collectively, when they're all put together,
Yes.
that denotes a large increase in this department?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Patty? He said you could give us a brief update on what's going on in technology.
So you want me to speak to the technology replacement fund or the
yes.
operational?
Well, maybe touch on both because there is significant changes coming in that area.
Right. So this is the first year since 2006 that we have not met our budget goal, and it is primarily due to the new position we're requesting. There's also a major fiber relocation project next year that we're thankfully aware of ahead of time, so we can put it in the actual budget. And the changes in the phone system. Maintaining the current phone system and transitioning to the new one is a long period, and we are keeping both of them working right now. So we do have a little bit of overlap, and that's why it's a little bit higher, and that's why it's in our budget as well. I think Chuck and I are going to work out for the 2016 budget an exact plan where your question would be answered, Mr. Fari, with the hit on the levy. You know, as we get rid of the old and transition to the new, we definitely do see that our costs should be down. And in order for that to be seen, we have to look at all the budget information and tell each department what that is. But again, as Chuck explained, there are other components to the phone expense account. But overall, I feel the levy should be reduced as we make that final transition. So those are the primary things with the operational budget that put us approximately 12% over this year. On the technology replacement side, last year we started a new plan to address inventory. Previously, historically, we based our same requests on inventory, but every year it was cut significantly to meet our budget goal. In explaining to both Mark and Chuck what's happening and how our infrastructure is hurting, we've agreed to allow that full request to go into the technology replacement account. So it did jump a lot. As well as next year, a large component of the increase is due to Microsoft. And that's a little bit out of our hands. They're changing the strategy for how we license everything. And our only option is to go with an alternative to get out of those costs. And that would be a huge transition with everything that's integrated and interfacing with Microsoft. Not impossible, but we have so much compatibility in working with the state. There are a lot of state systems that are directly tied to Microsoft. Other applications that we utilize and have written are interfaced and working with Microsoft. So at this point, we have that cost, and it's a little bit out of our hands. It's Microsoft licensing. So that's the biggest impact on the technology replacement fund.
Okay, go ahead.
The next section is facilities management. It starts on page 201. The facilities management department has 37 full-time employees and 1 part-time employee. The summary of significant changes starts on page 206. And Mike Elder is in the back of the room to answer any questions.
Could you just give, Mike, could you just give us an update on what some of your major things are going to be coming up here? I asked him to give us a report on what some of the major things he's going to be working on. I mean, there are many things that,
Okay. Some of the things that you've already approved through the capital project are, we've done a study for the windows for the courthouse, which I will be bringing forward to the Facilities Committee and the County Executive with a plan on how we're going to address the repair of the courthouse windows. That's going to be a significant capital improvement to the building. We're working on taking care of the precast joint seals on the jail. That we've just gotten the bid in, and that's going to be about $250,000 to finish that project. We're working with the Courthouse Security Committee and the County Board and the various committees to address the courthouse security. That's going to be an issue that we'll be working on over the next year. We've got a couple infrastructure projects to take care of some roofs on some of our buildings, some tuck pointing on some more of our buildings, a couple parking lot projects that we've got going on. Those are all projects that have been approved through this year through the capital project plan that is going to spread over the next 6 to 12 months to be completely done. Some of the capital project plans, though, were not funded by a bond issue, so they were moved into the normal building maintenance funding. So those you will probably see as a carryover request because we got the funding and everything going later in the year. So it will carry over past the the end of this year and into next year. And that would be the roof projects out at Knapp Street and the maintenance or the masonry repair projects out at Knapp Street. And then we'll just be looking at other capital projects that are coming along for the next year. We've got our major project that we've got looking at now is trying to do the asphalt repair throughout the county. That's a significant issue with all the different parking lots that we've had. That'll be a multi-year, probably 5 to 10 year project to get them all back up to a good standard. We're using the PACER scale ratings that Highways did for us a number of years ago. We're working on trying to have a comprehensive phased plan. We've got the roofs under a phased plan. We're trying to take a look at carpeting and doing that as a phased plan. We started that last year. We're doing our first major replacement of carpeting for the buildings this year. That's going to be about $45,000. I think at the last committee meeting and when we were doing the budget, if you take a look at, we've managed to get some software on board that we can start looking at all of our buildings. And basically, if we take all the space that we have that's carpeted in the county and we plan on replacing it every 40 or every 20 years, that would be a cost of $140,000 a year based on what our cost is to get carpeting done. And what we've asked for in our budget is a $70,000 a year amount to try and get us to replace the carpeting. If you look at some of the places like Family Court Counseling, some of these other places, it's more duct tape than it is carpeting. So what we're working on is trying to have more of these phased projects that we can start level loading out our budget so that it's a continual process and not one that I keep hitting you up with, oh, you know, here's a major project now that we've got to do. It's a big dollar amount.
Supervisor Knitsky.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Elder, will you explain to us what arc flash hazard is at a cost of $250,000?
Arc flash hazard is the National Fire Protection Association's code number 70E, which has been adopted by OSHA. And it was adopted by OSHA a number of years ago, and basically it's taken 18 months for us to get our arms around what we have to do to meet the requirements of OSHA. To explain what arc flash is, That is a condition that happens when you have a circuit breaker or a power panel have a problem when you make or break a circuit. And an arc flash is basically, it's called plasma. And basically it turns the electrical equipment and the atmosphere around it into a miniature version of the sun. And what we have to do is, in order to meet OSHA requirements, we have to have our people suited out in the right personal protective equipment. But in order to do that, we have to go through and take a look at every one of our power panels to determine what the potential is for an arc flash to occur. And that's what this study is for. If you really want to see what the effects of arc flash is, you can go to YouTube and just Google arc flash, and there's very good examples on what it does.
Supervisor Rowe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mike, I know that you have either just finished or about to finish an inventory of trees. Do you have any numbers you can share with us, any preliminary numbers about ash trees specifically?
I don't have those numbers right now. I know we've got the data from our survey team, and that has been collected. We're just starting to take a look at it. I don't have total numbers of it. But right now, I don't think we have any trees except the ones down at the south end. I think Black Wolf Landing might have a couple trees that are infected. We haven't found any trees that were really affected yet.
But they will be, and they're going to die.
Well, in the next 10 years, probably, yes.
On page 207, under grounds maintenance, it says amount $29,119. This increase reflects the emerald ash borer infestation issues. Can you explain that?
Right, that was $20,000 that was put into the budget to start cutting down trees or being proactive on what we, excuse me, what we need to do to minimize the cost for emerald ash borer here in the county. And that's a start. We may end up having to take down some trees preemptively. We may, if there's some significant trees that we want to, we may want to treat them. But really, what I've found is that treating the trees just basically kind of prolongs their life, doesn't solve the problem.
Further down on that page, there's a $50,000, which is a decrease to the fund balance from the emerald ash borer infestation, rather than placing this on the levy. The reason I asked for how many, if you had a number on how many ash trees, just trying to calculate, is 50, in your opinion, do you think 50,000 is anywhere near what we're going to need to replace the ash trees we're going to lose?
No.
Thank you.
But I'm looking at a 10-year window.
Right. Thank you.
Supervisor Gabbard.
My question was already answered.
Supervisor Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mike, on, let's see, where was it? On page 206, bottom item, vehicle repairs. What is the cost difference between repairing the two existing vehicles you have and buying two new vehicles?
Well, we've got estimates of about $10,000 to repair the two vehicles each, so that's $20,000 total. Our estimate is about $35,000 to $40,000 to replace each one of the vehicles.
How much wear and tear do these vehicles have?
I'm thinking if we can get the box replaced on the one and the flatbed on the other, we can probably get another 10 years out of the vehicles.
Okay, thank you.
Supervisor Haig.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to take a step backwards to a previous department. And I had a question lingering, but we're kind of jumping around a little bit here. There was a project that we, I believe, bonded for last year to replace some boilers at UW Fox Valley. And I was just curious, I know that Chris, I think, has already left, but I'm wondering if we can get a status on that and just some information about were they replaced, were they not, what's going on there?
Supervisor Widener, can you help us?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me handle that one. Basically, the boilers have not been replaced. We have put ourselves in a position where we're waiting to replace those because we're using the money that has been set aside for those boilers to bring down additional funds from the state for the state's energy savings project, which is in the name is a number of $1 million. The status of that is apparently they have finally decided to provide that money for us. Well, once we're sure we have that money, we will move forward with replacing the boilers. There is an additional program going on to try to modify the existing boilers and the other boilers in the facility so that we can better use the energy in the facility. But to answer the question short term, we have not yet replaced them. They'll be replaced as soon as we have a go-ahead from the state as far as getting the energy saving program.
So in the meantime, Chuck, maybe you can tell us where that money is, or has the bonds been issued, or?
Well, that was one of the projects that got switched from bonding to general fund balance. And that our share of the money has been moved into the capital project fund for the project, and it's just sitting there.
Thank you.
Supervisor Norton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mike, on your goals and objectives, when do you think the complete construction of the storage building for UW Extension will be, and when do you think the parking lot expansion and the sheriff's office will be?
We just got the contract signed and ready to go for the design of the sheriff's department parking lot. So that would be one of the first paving projects that we can get done next spring. The UW Extension storage building is out for bid, so that would be another one that would probably be as soon as we can do it. If it depends on how the winter weather is, we might be able to clear it and do some work over winter. If not, we'll probably start in April.
So you think the extension building would be done by next fair?
It should be done by the next fair, yes.
Okay, thank you, Mike. District Attorney.
District Attorney's budget starts on page 218. The department staffing chart is on page 222. The department has 18 full-time employees and 1 part-time employee, the same as the prior year. The summary of significant changes is on page 223. And Christian Gossett is in the back of the room to answer any questions.
Supervisor Eisen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Gossert, I'm referring to page 225. I'm looking at object number 45005. This object is a revenue source entitled warrant fees. The amount that's attributed to warrant fees for 2015 is a sum of $30,000. So we're expecting $30,000 revenue from warrant fees.
That sounds right to me. Ms. Kriz is on her way with the budget for me. I'm sorry. We got the notice pretty quick here this morning, so she's on her way. She'll be here shortly. But that sounds right as a revenue source, yes.
Well, in 2014, their adopted budget had 0 revenue from warrant fees. In 2013, there was $10,507 from warrant fees. In 2012, it was 0. In 2011, $250. On what assumption or what changes enable us to make the estimate that we'll have $30,000 from warrant fees? Or is it some other fund that is changed the number or moved over? Perhaps the finance director can assist with details in respect to that.
Supervisor Rowe.
by referring you to page 223. About midway down, it says warrant fees, $30,000 increase based on the diversion program, pre-charges and post-charges being moved to this new account.
Thank you, Mr. Rowe. That was an oversight on my part, and that does resolve the discrepancy.
Supervisor Warnke.
I was wondering, Mr. District Attorney, would you discuss civil forfeitures? There seems to be in the news lately about a lot of it, and it seems like there's been a lot of unfair treatment of civil forfeitures.
Can you bring the mic up to your closer?
For those of you who don't know what civil forfeitures are, it's when a large amount of cash is found in a vehicle and it's confiscated, and there's been a lot of news about it lately. Do you have a policy, and have you recovered money from civil forfeitures?
We do have, I guess, an agreement with law enforcement more so than a policy. I believe we don't seize any amounts less than $1,000. Part of that has to do with the costs that we incur in trying to seize that money. There's got to be a cost-benefit analysis done. When the money is seized, it does have to go through a court process. A judge has to make a determination that we can seize it. And any monies seized are divided between the law enforcement agency who seized the money and the school fund in the state. None of the money comes to the DA's office or the courts.
So you're saying that, have you confiscated any money in this last year?
We do civil forfeitures every year, and we do confiscate money, but we don't actually see a revenue from it. So there's no revenue account for us on it.
And does that include property also?
It does include property as well. That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Certainly. I'm sorry, if I can clarify one thing. There is a revenue that shows, but it's not from proceeds from the forfeitures. We pay a filing fee for the civil forfeitures, so we do get reimbursed from the agency for the filing fee. So we pay the filing fee and we get money back for that, but we don't actually make any money on the forfeitures.
But do you have to have a reason before you take this money, is that correct?
That's correct. We have to prove that the money was used in the drug trade.
Okay, thanks.
Certainly.
Page 230, Clerk of Courts.
Clerk of the Courts budget starts on page 230. The summary of significant changes starts on page 236. The chart of employees is on page 235. The department has 44 full-time employees, 2 part-time employees, the same as the prior year. And Melissa Conrad is in the back to answer any questions.
Supervisor Eisen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to refer to budget object 48,000 under the interest category. I'm just going to search back for the page there. Well, actually, 48,000. On page 240, the category is operating. It's interest added to the miscellaneous revenues. Well, anyway, interest investments for 2015. We're expecting $77,000 in revenue developed from interest investments. If we're getting 2% on our money, that means we probably have a couple $1 million on which we're drawing this investment interest. Could you explain what the source of that investment interest principal sum is?
Sure.
And how it's accumulated?
Sure, this is interest that we're collecting on judgments.
Got to
And-
talk right into there.
Oh, sorry. This is interest that we're collecting on judgments, and we are bound by statute on how much percentage we can collect on the interest. I believe it's at 4% right now.
Okay, in other words, someone is going through the process in the courts. They have a judgment against them for $1,000. They have, if they don't pay it, they're going to have a 4% interest charged on that money.
Correct.
And the $77,000 represents the cumulative of all of the interest that's charged to the forfeitures that are behind in payment.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Sure.
Supervisor Hagan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And again, I just want to take one step back. Is Mr. Elder still here? I was just going back over the numbers for repairs and et cetera, and I was looking for numbers for the Huber Center. I know I've been to some of the facilities and property management meetings recently, and I know that building continually comes up. So could you give us maybe just what we've spent there in the last 3 years, and maybe what we're going to need to spend there either this year or within the next 2 or 3 years to, just maintain that building for record storage, I think, at this point?
I don't have the exact figures for you on what we have spent. I know we pay for the utilities. We do minimal maintenance to keep it as a viable building. In the near future, what we will end up having to do will be to replace the roof, which will probably be over $100,000. The heating system out there, we've already had to replace the boiler due to age, but it's a unique system that they built to be energy conservation minded back in the early 90s, where instead of having coil units and heating units, we have heat pumps. Those have a lifespan of about 15 to 20 years, and we're reaching the end of the lifespan on those. So there are, I think, about 37 of those, and those will be a couple $1,000s a piece that we end up having to replace as they go bad. And then just the normal lights and electricity.
Okay, so I guess the question is, and I know last year I offered an amendment to discuss or put money in the budget to actually take it down. But, I mean, in your professional opinion, what are we doing with that building? I mean, is it really worthwhile for us to maintain it in its current capacity, knowing these repairs are on the horizon?
It's a viable space for the county to use as they see fit. If it's deemed by the governing body that it's no longer necessary or that they don't want it, then yes, I would support taking it down. But until it's been through the whole process of determination whether it's surplus and needs to be disposed of, or if we actually have a use for it for long term, I know every once in a while it comes back as a use for different functions. Right now, we are using it for records retention for some areas because it does have the necessary ventilation systems and fire protection systems.
I should add too that building has been a fiber hub for several county departments, but we have been gradually rerouting the fiber away from the Huber Center, so that I think we're down to one department's fiber passing through the Huber Center. I think that's landfill. And So we are in a better position to make that decision if we choose to take it down at some point as we reroute the fiber, so that demolishing that wouldn't require a major project to reroute all of that. We're doing it piecemeal.
And then, Mr. Elder, maybe one last question is in regards to, on page 213, the snow removal, line 75003. Does that include snow removal for the airport terminal parking lot?
No, I don't pay for snow removal at the airport. That would be, the 7,500 account numbers is what is the intergovernmental charge that Highways does for us for the courthouse, Oshkosh Human Services, and the buildings that they plow for us.
Thank you.
Supervisor Roll.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The numbers that I have been supplied with show that we spend approximately $46,000 a year to maintain the Huber facility. Basically, with the exception of a few records, it's an empty building, and we're spending $46,000 a year. And as Mike indicated, it's not long, and we're going to be looking at a new $100,000 roof, I believe he said. I will also comment on the usage of that building. At a recent P&F committee meeting, we were talking about the walk-in clinic, and I asked if consideration had been given to having the walk-in clinic out there. At that same meeting, I was told that the lease that we're about to enter into is going to cost the county $72,000 a year. Thank you.
Supervisor Ellis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Also, at the Huber Center, over the years, the Sheriff's Department has been using that for exercise, too, for different things out there. I think they still might be using that periodically.
Supervisor Norton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question pertains to the Wisconsin Children and Families intergovernmental revenue on page 239. Last night, County Executive Harris, you said that because of the state budget might be that they may have to cut back funds. And my questions are, is these funds, could they be targeted? And what impact would be if they would cut back? I mean, we're getting over $50,000 more. So my question is, are they targeted? And if they cut it, what does that mean to your department, Melissa?
We don't know where any cuts would occur, but we do know that in 2015, general fund expenditures appear to be greatly exceeding general fund revenues. So one would presume that if there is a budget correction, it would occur to people that receive money from the state's general fund, and that would include the county. But we wouldn't know where those lapses would be until they were determined.
Supervisor Finch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Supervisor Rowe brought up a good point. If it costs $45,000 to maintain that Huber Center, and we might enter into a contract for $72,000 for a health clinic, why would we not fix up the Huber Center for that? And then we're only paying $45,000. It's our own building. Why would we turn around and rent for $72,000 when we can have our building, heat, water, the whole 9 yards for $45,000? It makes no sense.
Mr. Colliard, would you answer that?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. After we had some difficulty with our preferred lease for the clinic, we did go out and take a look at the Huber Center again. Representatives of the school district, the city, and myself toured the facility, met with Mr. Elder. We looked it over. There's certainly, it's a much larger building than would be needed for the clinic, so there's certainly plenty of adequate space there. The problem is the remodeling costs would be very high. Mr. Elder estimated about $250,000 to remodel to suit what the clinic would need to do. Plus, we would have a delay of 9 months to a year in first seeking approvals and then getting the remodeling done to establish the clinic. The clinic, of course, is not just us. That $77,000 number would be the total, I believe, for the three entities, and we just generally be responsible for 30% of that amount. And so the school district and the city didn't want to pursue the Huber Center any further as a possible site for the clinic.
Supervisor Finch?
Thank you. First off, this is Winnebago County. This isn't the school district. This isn't the Oshkosh Health Center. This is Winnebago County. We're here to take care of Winnebago County. Why would we want to spend, I'll say it again, more money when we don't have to? Granted, it's going to cost us another excess dollars over the next 3 to 5 years. But let's look at the future for a change, not just today. I wholeheartedly would hope and think that the executive, yourself, Mr. Elder, and Mr. Collier will take into consideration that we are working for Winnebago County, nobody else. Thank you.
Supervisor Furry?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On this issue, this lease you're referring to for $72,000, what's the length of that lease? Is that a one-year lease?
It's a 3-year lease, but it wouldn't be the county leasing the property. It would be Intera Health, which would then recover its costs through the contract it has or will have with the school district and hopefully the city and the county as well over that 3-year period.
And I assume that's a requirement. They want that 3-year commitment?
Yes.
So there's no way we could do a 1-year commitment with this leased building while we're renovating the Huber Center?
No, because to use the other site for 1 year involves substantial remodeling costs that the landlord is picking up, and he's going to recover that over the 3-year term.
Thank you.
Supervisor Knitsky?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going from memory here, but I thought it took $20,000 to have a site at Oshkosh North, and now we're saying we got to spend $250 for the Huber building. How is Oshkosh North so? What does it have that the Huber building does not have?
Mike, can you try to answer it? I mean, I think the thing you have to remember, there's 3 different groups that are involved. It isn't just Winnebago County is the main kingpin, but could you answer it? Or help out? Mike, Mr. Collier.
I'm not sure what...
Okay, here's my question, and I'm going from memory. I thought to make this work, Oshkosh North, we'd only have to spend about $20,000 there, and to get this Huber building set up for your clinic, it would cost $250,000. So now, what does Oshkosh North have that the Huber building does not have?
I'm not sure what the supervisor is referring to about Oshkosh North.
Aren't we talking about a site for the clinic that we're talking about? Am I right or wrong here?
Yes,
I don't recall that as being a considered site. The site they've been talking about was at 21 and 41 in,
and that one
in a
didn't work
commercial
out.
strip center.
That one didn't work out, so it's actually been moved now to the Ohio Street location, not too far from here.
Okay, then now I'm off base here. I thought Oshkosh North site was on the table here.
Not to my knowledge, but Mike would be better equipped to answer those questions.
No, I don't think so. I don't think we considered a site at North.
I don't remember North ever being as a site, but Supervisor White.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a question here on the numbers. We're keep throwing a number like $77,000 out, and yet I think we could pay like 30% of that, which would be more like $20,000. Is that correct?
Well, yes, I think so, and I haven't done the math, but that sounds about right. But you know, and we just essentially pay that through our contract with Intera if the board approves that contract next meeting.
But it would be more in the neighborhood of 20,000 than 77.
Well, and it would be 20,000, and I should add that we wouldn't pay the 20,000 either. That would be paid by our health insurer as part of their agreement to pick up those costs.
So we have no cost involved?
Correct.
Thank you.
Supervisor Rowe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question has been answered.
Supervisor Haig.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In regards to, we don't have any financial interest, we certainly pay premiums, correct? I mean, so we certainly have, we're paying money to the company that would be leasing the building. Or are we not? I mean, this is not something that we're getting for free.
I think Mr. Haig is correct to the extent that someone bears that cost, that it eventually gets reflected into the premiums, and I think that's true.
Well, of course it is. I think it's entirely misguided to say that we don't have any financial interest in what's going on here. The second question is in regards to Mr. Finch's comments about Winnebago County. This should be looked at with a broader perspective. I've contacted 4 of the governmental leaders on the north end of the county. I know one of them certainly has talked with Mr. Collard about the wellness clinic. I'm not sure that the other 3 have, and I think to establish a clinic on Ohio Street in Oshkosh is short-sighted when, you know, if this works and other entities on the north side of the county want to join this clinic, it's certainly in an unfavorable location to any entity that would want to join the wellness clinic from the north end, where the Huber Center could potentially be a site that would at least be attractive to both entities on the north side of the county and on the south side. So I certainly would not be in support of a wellness clinic that is based in Oshkosh, which seems to me to be primarily for Oshkosh residents. I mean, as Mr. Finch said, this is Winnebago County, it's not Oshkosh County. And I don't know how many county employees, I imagine many of them live in Oshkosh, but certainly some of them have to live beyond the intersection of, you know, where the Huber Center is there. I just think it's a little short-sighted to put something like this in Oshkosh when potentially within a few years, if it works, we might have interested entities from the north part of the county.
Go ahead.
Yes, I have talked to 2 of the entities up in the north end of the county and emailed some others without a response, but the ones I talked to were very interested in a clinic, but wanted it to be established in Neenah. So if that project goes forward and we're able to be a part of it, there would be a second location. They are not interested in sharing the same location that the city of Oshkosh would share, so we'd have a separate joint venture. It could be somehow combined in terms of the same operator maybe running the clinics, but that's not yet determined. But if there is a venture to go in the north end of the county, I've expressed a great interest in being a part of that. And if there is, I'm sure there will be a separate facility in Neenah to handle that.
And isn't the city of Menasha involved with another district or something, or another school board, or like they wouldn't be involved in it?
I don't know if the city of Menasha has an interest in being involved at this point, but that's certainly something we'll explore.
Supervisor Fari.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think there's quite a bit being revealed in this discussion, but my question is to Mr. Harris. We had a presentation from the director in regard to this concept. And now it's gone to a point where he mentioned he's going to bring forward a contract, I assume through committee, Personnel and Finance, for approval by this board for a location in Oshkosh on Ohio Street. I assume that's the old grocery store?
I don't
No?
think so.
Just a guess. Is there anything in this budget that supports that concept that we should be looking at?
I don't think so, because part of the negotiation for the health insurance involved the health insurance provider providing funds towards the clinic on the theory that they would save money by having county employees utilize this clinic rather than seeing a physician. So as part of that insurance contract, they're willing to participate in that. Remember, this is all coming together. And the reason the numbers will probably work out as well as they do, saving us money, is because of the number of people participating in a given area. And we get that accumulation of people in the Oshkosh area by the school district, the city, and the county all agreeing. Now, I think part of what precipitated this moving so fast is that our personnel director has actually done this in the past in Sheboygan on a cooperative basis with other government entities. But the city was very anxious to explore this as a method for them to save money. So in some ways, this is an experiment well worth trying. And I suspect if it works out as well as it appears to be, that over time, other school districts within the county and other municipalities may want to participate. But this initial experiment is with the Oshkosh Area School District, the City of Oshkosh, and Winnebago County. And I think it's well worth pursuing, and if it works out well, then we may want to have some sort of expansion of that program. But obviously with the many county employees being located in this area, most of our employment occurs here within the city limits, all of the city's employment being within the city limits, and most of the school district employment within the city limits, it makes sense that this initial experiment would want a clinic in close proximity to where those employees work and live. And I also really don't think the Huber Center is an appropriate facility to use for a clinic. And I know from past experience with the city of Oshkosh that remodeling spaces that were designed in a jail-like fashion is very expensive. And I would cite you to the public safety building that we one time shared with the city of Oshkosh, that the second story of that building that was the jail at one time, that has never been remodeled or put to a different purpose because the costs have always been prohibitive. What I think the county should continue to do is get all the fiber under the Huber building relocated. And then once that's done, the board can make an intelligent decision as to whether the cost of maintaining that building is worth retaining it. And at some point in time, we may make the decision to, convert it to some other purpose or perhaps to take it down. I think that's something that would have to be seriously considered before we replace a roof.
Have you considered using that building for storage
Oh, yes, and we already are using it for some storage.
and enhancing that perhaps?
We do have to worry, though. Paper storage is extraordinarily heavy, and we have to make sure that the floors can bear that load. And it was not designed as a storage facility either. It was designed to be a Huber facility, which is sort of a hybrid facility that's very much like a jail in some ways and different in other ways.
So you're suggesting it may have structural deficiencies?
Well, anytime you're using a facility for a different purpose than it was constructed, you've got to make sure that you know what you're doing. But we would have had great difficulty taking that structure down, even if we wanted to, in prior years, because again, it was a hub for the internet fiber for 3 of our county departments, and we would have wiped out their technology capabilities if we'd just taken the building down a couple years ago.
Thank you for that perspective.
Supervisor Widener.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple points I'd like to make. Number one, I commented it would cost us nothing. It was not a case of whether it would cost us nothing long term. The point was it would cost us nothing on the lease, because I believe the comment made in the back of the room was the fact that the lease would be picked up by the supplier, I say supplier, wrong word. We will not really save any money on this until we gradually get enough situation where our rates for the health care will come down. We will save nothing in the first couple of years because basically we're already paying for the health care for our employees. if they gradually start using the clinic instead of the physicians and so forth, the cost will go down and we will see that in the rates long term. Second point I'd like to make is we are really carried away with the Huber Center. Everything that comes up is why don't we move it into the Huber Center? I think we should sit back and think, what is it we're trying to do, and forget about the Huber Center. I personally would like to see it go down, once we get the hub that the executive talks about, because everything that happens, when we had Parkview, we had everything else, we talked about the Huber Center. Let's get off the Huber Center. Let's start talking about what we're trying to do in our programs. Thank you.
Supervisor Finch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Speaking of Huber Center, I'm still for it, Tom. And for many years, it's been the north side, south side, day in and day out. Well, what about Village of Winneconne, Amro, Vinland, neighbor here? I think the Huber Center would be more centrally located at the present time for total Winnebago County. Yes, it might cost us some extra dollars to fix it up, but that's what this is all about, taking care of Winnebago County. And where it's situated right now, you got easy access off of 41, going north-south, 21's not that far from there, 44, a little bit farther. But anyway, the point is, that is more centrally located to take care of the citizens of Winnebago County. So I'll be very honest with you at the present time. I would vote no for anything but the Huber Center. Thank you.
Supervisor Rowe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The county executive a few minutes ago said something, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you said the walk-in clinic is a good experiment. I will go beyond that and say that I'm 100% in favor of it. I think it is a money saver down the road. I have talked to a number of counties that have gone this route, specifically Waukesha County, and if they were going the walk-in clinic route by themselves, they were projecting a savings of $600,000 over the next 4 years. They combined with the city of Waukesha and the school district down there, and they expect to save $3.2 million. So I'm 100% in favor of the walk-in clinic. With respect to the Huber Center, just a couple comments there. For those of you that aren't aware of it, there's a lady that used to be on the board. Her name was Joanne Seifert. Joanne, this is one of her pets for years. We now live in the same building. Every time I see Joanne, she says, "What are we doing with the Huber Center?" I'm not saying that the Huber Center should be used for the walk-in clinic. I just ask that it be considered. As long as the four walls are standing, I think we have to look outside the box and figure out, if it's there, what can we use it for? I'm not on a big campaign to put the walk-in clinic out there. I just said, have we looked at it and can we consider it? One last comment on the Huber facility, for those of you that don't know. It was closed a number of years ago, and that, in my opinion, I wasn't even on the board yet, but I think that was an excellent decision. It has saved this county millions of dollars. Unfortunately, we got this albatross that we have around our neck now, but it was an excellent decision years ago. We've saved millions of dollars over the last several years, and the sheriff is in the back room. He could attest to that. And thank you for your time.
Supervisor Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd just like to share one thought. There was a great deal of discussion much earlier about encouraging people to go to our health facility as opposed to going to their own physicians. The idea was that we would save money only to the extent that we can get people to come to our clinic as opposed to going to their physicians. This is not an Oshkosh-Neenah issue. This is an issue for saving money. And if you move to the Huber Center, you would have far more people going to their own physicians than would be going out to the Huber Center. The central location in Oshkosh at the moment is a very good idea and should not be scrapped. The Huber Center would get much less participation than a location on Ohio Street or wherever. Thank you.
Supervisor Smith, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Another thing about the Huber Center, and consider using it for a clinic, is parking. And it's a bad problem there if you're going to have something like a walk-in clinic and having a parking situation, because we don't have the space for parking.
Should we move to the sheriff's budget?
No, I want to do the coroner first.
Okay.
He's waiting to get out of here.
Mr. Chairman?
The county coroner's budget.
Just a minute. We're going to the coroner.
Can I just introduce someone real quick?
You got to talk. I can't hear you.
Can I just introduce someone real quick?
Sure.
To the board? I wanted to introduce Chris Demos. He's the new Family Court Services Director. And then I just wanted the opportunity to have a face to a name for everyone.
I'll just say good morning quick, and I'm excited to keep working for the county. Thank you.
I kept asking the clerk, who's that man sitting back there with the beard? And
Exactly.
you're saying, I don't know.
I can shave it.
Now the mystery is solved. But the coroner had asked earlier if he could get out of here. So.
The coroner's budget is on page 266. The coroner has only one part-time employee, but there are contracted deputy coroners to help cover the 24/7 schedule that the coroner operates under. And the summary of significant changes is on page 271.
Supervisor Roll.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Barry, I just have one quick question. On page 271, it says pathology services, $25,500 increase in autopsies projected to be performed in 2015. And I'm aware that cremations and so forth are up. Does this have anything to do with cremations?
No, cremations actually are staying pretty stable. We went way up from when I started 17 years ago, but now it's been pretty steady about.
Then why the increase in autopsies?
Well, autopsies have been done because we have a very large increase in heroin and drug problems in Winnebago County, and the cause and manner of death has to be determined in all these cases. We continuously, this last couple of weeks, we've had a couple of homicides. There's just a lot of, actually, we have 79 autopsies to date, where last year we had 68 total. And I don't anticipate a decrease in autopsies.
Thank you.
Supervisor Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't know who to direct this to, but we have, Ms. Harris said there's 8 deputy coroners part-time that we contract for. And what is the advantage of contracting as opposed to bringing somebody on staff?
Well, the tradition has been that we've paid the deputy coroners a combination of call pay and per diems when they actually respond to calls, but you have to cover 24/7. So typically, the deputy coroners have other employment, perhaps with funeral homes, maybe in a hospital, maybe some prior law enforcement. So they typically don't work for us full-time, but we have to have somebody on call all the time. And with only one full-time coroner, it would be impossible for him to cover around the clock.
Why don't we have somebody full-time to assist him, I guess, is what my question is.
That's an issue we actually looked at for a prior budget, and if we added a full-time person, we would expect them to have office hours, that they would have a time that they would work and would have a defined number of hours. But to meet our needs, we needed these flexible employees that had lots of call time, but only were paid per diem fees when they actually responded to calls. It just seemed that that was the cheaper way to go.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we're going to take a 5-minute break.
No.
The Winnebago County Board is currently in a break. Please stay tuned for continued coverage. For broadcast times of local government meetings, check our website at oshkoshcommunitymedia.org. You're watching City Cable 10, your source for government programming in the Oshkosh area. Simulcast on 101.9 FM WOCT and streamed on the World Wide Web at oshkoshcommunitymedia.org.
I think we're done.
You're going to speak on that November 6th, aren't you? You're going to talk to about.
Okay, we'll resume our budget process. The coroner has one quick comment he wants to make.
Just so you know, on November 6th at 6 o'clock in the evening, our heroin task force is meeting with a large contingent of expected people at the Alberta Kimball Auditorium at Oshkosh West. We expect, I hope to get a couple hundred people or more. It would be awful nice to see some or all of you at this meeting to understand some of the problems that we're facing in law enforcement, in the coroner's office, and in the health department and everything else. So November 6th, it's a Wednesday at 6 o'clock. Thank you.
Thank you. Page 245.
I'm sorry, November 5th then. It's the Wednesday, it's the day after the election.
The 5th.
Okay, I'm sorry, November 5th. Pardon?
The,
Alberta Kimball Auditorium at Oshkosh West. November 5th, I'm sorry about that.
The next section in the budget is the sheriff's office budget. It starts on page 245. John Motz is in the back of the room. The chart of staffing has 195 full-time employees, 8 part-time employees for a total of 203. That's 1 full-time employee over our 2014 budget. The summary of significant changes is on page 250 and page 251.
Okay, say that over again. That's one full-time employee more than 2014.
Yes.
And why isn't that stated? So now we're up to 2.5 or?
Yeah, it's increased from 194 full-times to 195.
So total people and total number of new people is 2.5. Well, we'll say 2.
No, in the front of the book in the summary, the additions to the staffing for the county is 7 full-time positions and 2 part-time positions.
Okay. Supervisor Eisen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Question, Your Honor, Sheriff, that I have relates to the Jail Improvements Fund. So it's something that it's in your area of expertise and responsibility, but it's the next section of the budget.
We'll wait till we get to that one again.
Thank you.
Supervisor Widener.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have one quick question on the capital outlay. You've got like 8, I think 10 vehicles. Are those all replacement?
Yes, there are no additional vehicles, just replacement.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Supervisor Haig.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In regards to courthouse security project, et cetera, what is your game plan, if you will, or your strategy for developing a plan to implement some of the monies that have been approved already for security? And what do you see as potentially being carried out in 2015?
The courthouse security study was completed. You were privy to that presentation. And now the courthouse security committee has met, and we will begin to develop another presentation to you and give you some options, just as we had done with the first one, but now we can incorporate the study that was just done as part of that presentation and options that are available. The monies that were approved, there was approximately $250,000 that was approved for a technology upgrade, which would have been a PA system, duress alarms, and cameras monitoring system within the courthouse. And that was tabled because we wanted to see what this study was going to tell us in regard to placement of that camera, the overall security of the building. So it's being developed, and that decision will be up to the board on how far we move ahead. Again, one of the options will be to do nothing other than what we have continued to do with training employees, making them more security aware, more additional SOPs and policies that they can follow in case there is an incident that occurs at the courthouse. And then you'd be given some other options, but it won't be quite as extensive because this study has limited it to really a couple of new options.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I did attend that courthouse security meeting. Very insightful. I thought all the different viewpoints were brought about. And I think at the end of the day, what you were talking about was what was identified as an 80% solution. And that seemed to divert considerably from what the consultant came in with as far as the whole enchilada, if you will, in regards to courthouse security. So what can we do in 2015 to get us towards that 80% solution? Is it just the cameras? Is it something else?
Well, the committee has not all weighed in, although we did have one committee meeting, and we've begun to put more things together. I think that getting back to what we had done originally, and one of the options was having a welcome center that is a screened one entrance into this building is the 80% solution. And I think it's 80% solution to the overall security, and then on top of that we could add the technology upgrades that I just discussed. And having that one locked screened entrance, although I can't absolutely 100% guarantee that a weapon will not get into this building, it is as close as you can get without building a new building that has other things in place. So I personally, I believe that is the best option to take care of the security, address the security concerns of this building. I think that is one of the things that we will bring back to the board as a committee.
Thank you. I look forward to making this building as secure as we can for the people who work here. So I appreciate everybody who spent time at that meeting and all those ideas were shared. Thank you.
Supervisor Hamlin.
Thank you. Page 257. About halfway down under utilities, as looking at this, there appears to be no line item for stormwater management or storm utilities. Is that budgeted somewhere else?
So your question is there's nothing about stormwater?
Stormwater, well, I'm sure the city is.
Yeah, that would be handled through facilities. We don't, as a particular line budget item, we wouldn't have anything in our budget.
So it's in the facilities budget then?
Yes, if there's concerns or there's something that needs to be addressed, it would be in their budget.
Thank you.
Supervisor Roll.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With respect to courthouse security, just a heads up to any of you that are interested, there will be a joint committee meeting the second Wednesday of November between Facilities, Property Management, and Judiciary Public Safety. Joint committee meeting held on Knapp Street the second Wednesday in November to discuss courthouse security. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Farley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sheriff, I'm hoping you can help my memory. In regard to that $250,000 technology upgrade, we had a joint committee meeting. We voted at that meeting. It was downstairs, I believe, in the basement. to support the 250,000. Then, did that come to the county board for approval?
I believe it came to the county board, and I do not recall if it was approved.
Was it
I believe
approved?
it was approved, and then
so the
because
board-
we had the study that occurred as well, we decided to table it at that point. So does it still exist? That I'm not quite sure.
Who decided to table it? Because if the board approved it, that's the direction of the board. Who tabled it?
I think there was a joint meeting of facilities and judiciary. And because they were exploring an overall project on courthouse security with the consultant, who's kind of an expert in building design, I think they wanted to hold off on moving forward with any changes until we knew what would be incorporated in that major courthouse project. Now, that project has never come to the board for their approval. And the initial study would suggest a very significant project.
I'm on facilities, and perhaps Mr. Roll can help my memory, but I don't recall saying let's not spend the 250,000. Am I incorrect? Perhaps I am. My memory isn't real secure. Help me out, but I don't recall stopping that.
I think you're correct, though, inquiring of the sheriff, because I think it was an executive decision by the sheriff
Okay,
not
a
to
committee.
proceed with courthouse security changes until the courthouse study was done.
Okay, so then that being the procedure we followed, then I assume that you're still of the same opinion. We need to make another decision with courthouse security before we spend what the board has already approved.
Well, I would have to look
That's
back
my
at the.
concern.
I have to look back at the record because I'm not sure that the board as a whole had that project come before them twice, and I'm not sure if it has to go before them twice. I do believe the board. It came before the board and was presented to you. I think there was some indication that the board was interested in that, and certainly at that joint meeting, there was enthusiasm for that.
Yeah,
But
yes.
I'm not 100% certain there was a second presentation to the board as a whole to get the final approval to move ahead on that. And that's something we'll have to check the record.
You don't call a resolution come before this board to appropriate and approve the money?
It may have happened, but I don't recall that it had.
We'll look into it.
All right, thank you.
So,
What year would it have been, this year or last year?
this year.
Oh, now you ask more than I can give you. I don't know.
It would have been last year, I think. It would have been last year.
A couple of years ago, wasn't it? I think it was 13.
Supervisor Smith. We'll figure it out. Supervisor Smith.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sheriff Matz, on page 257, item number 55011, called Board of Prisoners, I noticed that the only time there was anything on there was 250 in 2012, and since then, nothing. Just exactly what is Board of Prisoners?
Well, that's probably just a change in accounting numbers. We still have Board of Prisoners that we get revenue from in regard to Huber and GPS, as well as intensive sanctions that we take in from the state. We get monies there, and as well as probation holds, felony probation holds from the state as well. So it's just the money is there, it's just in different account numbers.
Sheriff, I think he was talking about the expense, not the revenue. 55011, you said?
Yeah, 250.
Yeah, that's boarding a prisoner's expense, and we don't have any boarded out.
Right, yeah, no, that's
So
the
there's
expense
no
account.
cost.
No, we don't have to board out. I don't anticipate that. Our numbers are really looking very well in comparison to what Kimmy and Associates, which was the consultant that looked at our jail numbers when we wanted to, or questions were asked regarding expansion of the jail. Kimmy estimates our numbers, I believe, to be in the 360 range today, and actually our count this morning was 296. So we are really doing very well, and a lot of it has to do with the diversion programs that everybody in the criminal justice system within the county is participating in.
Good, then as long as we don't have to spend any money on anybody else.
Correct.
Supervisor Roll.
Chairman, to the best of my recollection, those monies were approved by this board. I had actually several months after that questioned why haven't we done this, and I was told that because of the pending investigation on the courthouse security and the survey and so forth, that it was put on the back burner. The sheriff answered that question, and just so everybody knows, the courthouse security committee, Judge Seifert and all of the rest of those committee members were well aware of that and were fine with that decision.
The next section under Sheriff Motts is the Jail Improvements Fund on page 261.
Just 1 second. Supervisor Thompson.
I'm sorry I didn't punch the button sooner. I just have a quick question on motor fuel on page 256. That's item number 53548. I noticed that for the last year it was $230,000. The current year is $268. The request for next year is $295. That is in thousands of dollars. Motor fuel has gone down quite a bit, and is certainly lower than it was in 2013. Can somebody explain the request?
Sure. Some of the change that you see there is because the board had approved a propane program. Well, that didn't pan out. Propane prices last winter skyrocketed. They were $6 a gallon. I am not an expert on propane, but I certainly have learned a lot about the propane industry. It is the only unregulated fuel in the United States. 98% is produced here. It is a byproduct of natural gas. The only cost is in shipping. So somebody's making a lot of money off of you and I, and it's unregulated. And we checked into it. The best contract we could get was $2.26 a gallon. At that price, when we do the conversion kits, we don't make any money. So it was not worth us to continue the propane project. That's why you see motor fuel go up a little bit, but also when we projected our motor fuel prices, when the gasoline prices, that was done in June, it was $3.70 a gallon. And I think that we're all aware of, savvy enough to know that during a major election year, we see those fuel prices go down, somebody gets elected, they go back up, and I presume the same thing is going to happen because it does time and time again. That's why we projected fuel prices where we did. Certainly, it is an item that we will not spend. It is a very set item as far as just strictly being motor fuel.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Supervisor Fari on the sheriff.
I think it's been answered. Actually, when Mr. Thompson raised the issue about fuel, that triggered the question about propane. So did we actually put in a large storage tank, or that was...
We did nothing.
We did nothing, okay.
We did nothing.
Yeah.
As we began the RFP process, actually that's when the whole propane industry took the $6 a gallon jump. And as it leveled off during the summer, we looked at it again, but again, the best we could do was $2.26. And when you do the infrastructure and the length that we'll have those vehicles and the cost of equipping them, it was no longer viable for us to continue.
So in other words, we're saying we're going to spend a lot of money to do the infrastructure, and the cost isn't controlled. So
yep.
Yeah, I think it's really excellent effort, but obviously it's not going to work out very well. Thank you.
We will still continue to look at it year after year. If it becomes a viable alternative, we will go forward. We're definitely very educated in the area.
I just have a comment. There's a lady in the back, Carol Buchholz. She's going to be doing these pink sheets. Huh? Oh, Doug is? Well, okay, but meantime, they can give them to her or what? Yeah, sure. You can give them to her until then. Or John. Okay, jail improvement.
Jail Improvements Fund on page 261. That's also under Sheriff Motts. And
Supervisor Eisen.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I have a question, Your Honor, the sheriff, on page 263. This could also be addressed to County Executive Mr. Harris. This relates to the subtopic fines and permits, and under that, jail assessments, object number 44102. And I know that the sheriff's budget was put before the Judiciary and Public Safety Committee prior to the sheriff's meeting with the county executive, and the committee would have approved the request of the sheriff for jail assessments, which I understand to be monies paid by prisoners to the sheriff's office in the amount of $409,000, which after meeting with the executive was reduced to $173,000. May I inquire what transpired between the committee and the executive overview of this category?
I think some dollar amounts were in the wrong line.
No, it's actually, part of that money was actually fund balance from the jail assessment fund that was going to be used, and that you don't budget fund balance as a revenue line. So $236,000 of 409 was actually drawing down the fund balance, and that's not really a revenue on an income statement. So
Okay, that's money that I believe, if I recall, is going to be used to purchase a body scanner of some variety that kind of clicks together between the two. Okay, thank you very much for that explanation.
276, emergency management.
So emergency management starts on page 276, actually 276. The chart of personnel indicates 1 full-time position and 2 part-time positions, and the summary of significant changes is on page 281. And Linda Coleman is in the back of the room to take any questions that you have.
Supervisor Knitsky.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Page 279 on your wish list, goals and objectives. Replace a new siren. Who needs one? Where is it going?
Winnebago Street here in Oshkosh. The siren is starting to fail, so we are replacing it.
Thank you.
Supervisor Eisen.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Linda, could you explain to the board, there's on page 279, there's a 2015 goal and objective number 1 to host the second state mobile communication SIMCOM full-scale exercise. Could you take a minute or two to explain what was accomplished in 2014 and how this going forward is going to position the county and the prestige that attributes to Winnebago County with our hosting this national event?
Yes, in 2014, we held a statewide communications exercise here at the Sunnyview Expo Center. We had over 100 participating agencies from all over Wisconsin, some even some federal agencies came. It tests mobile communication platforms. So if you have other jurisdictions or municipalities that come into your disaster, they'll be able to communicate by testing out the deficiencies prior to the disaster. We were asked in 2015 to hold a federal event here in Oshkosh because 2014 went so well. They are finishing the final details before they give us the information on it. There will be grant dollars that will be involved to help pay for the costs, but in 2014 they were so pleased with how things went here that they asked we hold the federal exercise in 2015.
And can you explain, it's also an economic generator for the community, bringing in several hundred people to Winnebago County for a couple days?
Sure. The exercise will probably begin in an afternoon and then continue the following day. I'm not sure how many people they're looking at coming from all across the country, but definitely it could increase some of the hotel visits here during that exercise.
Okay, we'll go to pay until the other department heads get here. We'll go to 338 for child support.
Child support starts on page 338. Kathleen Dietrich is in the back of the room to take any questions. The chart of personnel for that department includes 23 full-time employees, the same as 2014. And the summary of significant changes is on page 343. The child support area is billed out to the state and the federal government, and some support to that department from other parts of the county are reimbursable as well. And Kathleen Dietrich's in the back if you have any questions.
I have no questions. Okay, we'll skip to non-divisional and we'll go to the county board. It's on page 521.
So the county board obviously has no employees. Have county board members, but no. You have elected officials, but no employees.
And Outagamie County, Mr. Eisen, how many employees does Outagamie County Board have?
Several.
Multiple employees for the office of the chairman.
I'm sorry, you have to repeat it.
There are 4 full-time employees working and reporting to the chairman, including a...
That's good, thank you. Supervisor Farm.
Thank you. Oh, here we are. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tell me a little more about the $36,000 request to purchase 40 iPads.
What page is it?
I'm on page 528. Significant changes from the 2014 adopted / county board. So even though our levy was reduced, we got 36 grand in there.
That's for iPads for youth to learn how to use an iPad.
Is that what that is?
Well, you'll no longer be getting all the paper. You're going to be using an iPad.
How did that decision come up and who made it?
We're making it right now. I put
Yeah,
it in
so
the
if we
budget.
approve it, we're stuck with it.
Yes.
That's what
If you
you're
don't want
telling.
it, take it out. I mean, it's
Oh,
just-
thanks. I might do, gentlemen, do we all want iPads? Do we all want to go get away from the paper? Some might, but others
Well,
might
that's
not.
what you're going to vote on. You have this, I just mentioned it 10, 15 minutes ago. You got a slip here, take it out.
Yeah. But had I not brought it up and caught it, it just would have happened, huh?
If, on any of these pages you just went through, if you didn't bring it up, it's going to
Yeah,
happen.
okay, I got it. Thanks.
I will volunteer that was on the Counties Association Board, and they switched us to iPads to save on printing and paper costs. And also the Fox Valley Technical College, when I was on their board, also switched to iPads to save on printing and paper costs. And we're seeing boards of all different kinds do that. So this is new to us, but is not a unique thing at all.
I don't have a problem pursuing that, but I really resent just putting it into a budget, and if you don't happen to catch it, you got it.
Well,
Let's have some discussion, gentlemen. Let's talk about it.
I understand what you're saying.
Let's review that before we do something like that.
But it is in the summary of significant changes for that department.
Yes,
So-
I know. I just.
It's listed right there. It's, I
Oh,
always
yeah.
was,
I'm not talking about how it's listed. I'm saying, why didn't we have a general discussion about it?
so we would be
Prior
here,
to
if
the
we would
budget.
have took this whole book and went on general discussions on all the things, we would have been here every single night, like last night. Supervisor Smith.
Yes, just to clarify a few things. The iPad discussion has been going on for over a year. The IS committee is working on a set of rules, which we incorporate in county board rules for the use of county-owned iPads or the private iPad use for the purposes of eliminating paper waste and to be more convenient as far as time is concerned in being able to look up pieces of information from the budget or other resolutions. So we will be bringing forward a resolution for the incorporation of those in the near future. I do have some draft outlines, one from Calumet County, one that our subcommittee came up with. I was hoping to have it all put together for this budget meeting, but we were unable to do it.
People
So-
are complaining that they can't hear you. Can you talk further?
Can you?
You don't have to start over, but.
Start over?
No,
Okay.
don't start over, but just speak more into your mic.
Okay. Anyway, we will be bringing forward the rules and that for iPad. The problem that comes in with these iPads is, as you know, technology changes very rapidly. And we've got an idea of where we'll be. Exactly what we'll be using is going to be determined a little later on down the line. But it is something we're going to be going forward with, and it will be coming in front of the board for full approval of the county board once we have things more definite. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Supervisor Rasmussen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On the iPads, I just recall, I believe it was at last year's county board legislative session, some of us were sitting at a table with, trying to get into my memory bank here, I believe it was an administrator from Sauk County, I could be wrong on that, and she was talking about this same thing and same reaction, what are we doing here? But she said once everybody got on board with it, they were very pleased with it and saved a significant amount of money by doing that. Thank you.
Supervisor Rowe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I can't help but notice on page 530, under wages for elected officials, apparently you requested $143,000, and the executive has decreased that to $135,000. Can one or both of you share why, what?
Well, basically, we looked at history, and if you look at 2011, 12, and 13, 2011 was 120,000, then 128, and 128. So 143 looked like too much based on past experience, so we asked him to reduce it to 135, which is still quite a bit more than the 128. And he agreed to do it.
But the 128 was 2 years ago. Anybody know what year to date is this year?
I have it, but it'll take me a minute to find it here.
Yeah, I think I will.
And also what this is, there's two of them, I believe, the citizens and the elected officials were added together rather than other per diem and elected officials were added together. Correct, Chuck? That there were two, there was another one, I think it was 51-107, was added to the elected officials that pushed it up. Actual to date is 95,528.70 as of the last month.
In 51-107? Or what?
No, I'm saying that we added the other per diem to the elected officials. Other per diem is,
Well, that's a small component. But the year-to-date expense, I have it here, is 95,529
that's what I just,
for the county board per diem.
So prorated out, that's 127 and change, so I guess the 135 looks acceptable. But the other per diem that you were speaking about now, that was the next question I had. You had 3,000, Mr. Chairman, and that's down to 0?
that's because we put it into the 135, or whatever we just said.
And you're okay with that?
Yes.
The question and answer that there's two types of reimbursements to county board members for committees, but the commissions and boards sometimes have civilian members, like Department of Health has a number of people that are not board members. Those were on two different line items in the past, and those have been combined to a single line item.
Supervisor Haig.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't want to assume, so I just want to clarify then that if somebody was to write an amendment for that 36,000, that would come out of line 58004?
Yes, right, Chuck? Whatever the number is, whatever that, I don't have it there now.
No, it's already out of there. It'd come out of 53,522.
No, he's talking about the 36,000 for the iPads. Okay.
On the next page.
If you eliminate the iPads, you'll probably have to add money back to postage. And I'm not sure which budget that hits.
It would be printing.
Yeah, but the board packets are also mailed out, and I don't know
Then
if
it
that
would be
hits the
two of them.
clerks. Comes out of his, yeah. So if we're doing paper materials, I think you probably have to add funds back to postage. That may have, did we reduce that, Chuck, when we put the iPads in or not?
I also think that we've been
No, we
having
didn't.
more meetings where we join people.
Isn't that, Sue, isn't that in your budget? The printing cost is in your budget, isn't it?
No, printing and postage comes out of theirs.
Oh.
So what line item then is the printing, so we could see the decrease offsetting the capital outlay for the iPads? Say that again, please?
I think it's 5300.
I can't hear you either.
53002 and 53004.
But those are both showing, well, the
No,
the one.
it would be, the printing would be 73,003, and the postage is 73,004. But neither of those were reduced.
Well, why, if the executive is saying that we would have to add money back in potentially to not use the iPads, why are neither of 73003 or 73004 showing a
Well, we
decrease?
must have overlooked it.
Yeah, should have been done.
In regards to the other on page 531, capital outlay subtotal, that 2013 actual number, is that what actually cost for these?
The 2013 number is the scoreboard, the voting system.
Right, this?
Yes, the whole system.
Okay, and where is the number that we put in the budget last year for that salary study? Wasn't that in the county board?
Mm-hmm.
So did that actually get spent, or did a
No.
portion?
It didn't get spent.
Okay, so we approved, where is that number so I can see it?
It's not in here. It's in the 2014 budget, not the 2015.
Okay, and when I review that, what line should I?
It's in 55014 on page 532.
Okay, and because we didn't spend that this year, that just got rolled right into the fund balance?
Well, this year isn't over yet, but the county board chair can request that that be carried over into next year when we close the books on this year, which I'm assuming would be done. So the money, instead of going back into fund balance, it would be carried over into 2015.
Okay, so does the county board chairman then need to make an amendment?
No, the budget doesn't need to be amended. It's a year-end closing process where I send out a memo asking departments if they had projects that they didn't get to do, and they will request that we carry the money forward.
Thank you.
I will like to add, though, that 70,000 is probably not sufficient to do a comprehensive payroll study, and Mike's had experience with that. He might be willing to comment on, you can do those studies at different levels, but if you have a job-by-job review of what's an appropriate pay level, it would undoubtedly cost significantly more than 70,000. And maybe, Mike, would you be willing to comment on the ranges of prices and what you could get?
Well, I think a lot of what we want to do with the study can be done for the 70,000. We won't be able to study every job and necessarily have the consultant do the in-depth study and market reviews for all of the target positions. But it'll give us a very good start on that, but the more important part is just restructuring the plan, figuring out how we're going to have pay movement, how the pay for performance proposal is going to look, how we're going to make adjustments as needed, and so forth. And I think pretty clearly that can be done within the $70,000 limit. Of course, that's just the cost for the consultant, not the expense that may result from any raises or adjustments to salaries that the consultant may or may not recommend.
I guess that raises a good question in itself. Is it entirely necessary that we seek an outside consultant to do a wage study? Can't we do that? Can't Mr. Collard do that?
You know, I think there's parts of it we can do in-house, although it's an enormous amount of work. But the part where the value comes in from the consultant is that they've developed databases that they don't share, by the way, of what are appropriate comparables. And what's a comparable has changed. In the past, they used to compare unionized government operations to other unionized government operations. But now the consultants are all using blended databases that have private sector information put into them. They don't tell you exactly what they're using for their database, but that's the proprietary product that the consultants have that they won't give even to their clients, but that's how they generate the numbers. And that can't be done in-house unless you had your own database, but that's a tremendous cost to build that.
Right. The point was made during last night's discussion that public employee wages and salaries are public information. And with that said, I don't know that there is, I could be entirely wrong, but I don't know that there is such a need for all this blended data when we could certainly find that information and go forward with a wage study done in-house, did we need to hire a consultant to look into this prospective employee wellness clinic?
No, we actually had a human resource director that had some expertise in the area. But what you need is you need the private sector part of that to blend it. See, they no longer just use public sector to do those studies. And I think that's the primary cause for the big shift in the numbers from what they had in the past. But yeah, you would need to do the wage study, you would need some outside expertise with a database for each type of job and comparables both within the public and the private sector.
Okay, which is interesting and a bit ironic to me, simply because during last night's discussion, again, we had a hard time deciding or differentiating between public and private. I mean, is that something that we want to do? Do we want to keep this a public pay scale wage study, or do we want to incorporate public and private? I mean, that's part of this discussion that we voted on last night to have going forward, so I appreciate that, because I'm not necessarily sold on the concept that we do. If this is for public employees, this wage study should be done comparing public wage employees. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Gabbard.
My question's been answered, thank you.
Supervisor Farley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On the topic that we just ventured into, last night the county board approved an amended salary increase for the employees, and I believe it was stated that the finance director would come back with the savings of that amendment. Do you have that for us, sir?
I believe Mike Collard has that. Just to let you know, that money is in the budget, so if you want to take it out, you need to amend it.
Yeah, that's why I'm asking the question.
Okay. How much does the budget need to be adjusted by if they take the funds out?
The amount that could be taken out of the budget levy based on the vote last night would be $306,549 in wages, $44,296 in fringes, for a total of $350,846. That would be divided among very many object accounts in different orgs, and so we would rely on the finance department to split it out later.
Yeah, I think we'll just submit it in its total, and then give you the discretion to apply it correctly.
With the chair's permission, I would like to comment. I did do a little research last night, and the average private sector base pay increase for 2014 was 2.9%, and for 2015 it was 3.0%. They also had data on performance increases, and in the private sector they divided them into quintiles instead of quartiles. The lowest rated in terms of performance quintile got an additional 0.1%, and the highest rated quintile in terms of performance got an additional 4.8%. And the reason I mention that the 1.5% total raise is completely out of line with the private sector.
Give us 1 second. No, I asked her to come up here. So we'll do that. And it's on what page? 443. Okay, page 443, the Register of Deeds. The reason I'm switching around was because some of the other people weren't here, and I didn't think our own budget would take that long. But
I think the Register of Deeds on page 476 is the start of that budget.
476.
Julie Pagel's in the back of the room to answer any questions. On page 479 is the chart of personnel. It's 7 full-time personnel, the same as 2014. The Register of Deeds is a profit center where, based on fees from real estate activities, it generates revenue in excess of the costs of operating the department. But it's very subject to swings in the volume of real estate activity. The summary of significant changes is on page 480. Chuck, next year, bigger page numbers. Yeah, they used to be, years ago, they used to be big enough, but not anymore.
You know, you made the comment about the iPad. I was just like you guys were. When they gave them to us for the Counties Association, I thought, well, I don't need this. But that's all I use now. They download it to you in a PDF file. It's right there. And we will have somebody come with a couple training sessions before each meeting to show us how to use it. I mean, it isn't like what you're thinking. Thumbs up, great. Go ahead.
So is there any questions for the Register of Deeds? If not, we'll move on to the next department. Who do you want to do next?
We're going, which one? For transportation. Supervisor Haig.
In regards to, thank you, in regards to the Register of Deeds Department, that is another one of those departments that could potentially move from this building.
Yes.
Is there necessarily a cost to that? I mean, is there going to be a cost in decreased production necessarily? I mean, I asked the same question last night of the Treasurer's Department. I guess that's my biggest concern is if
Okay,
we're moving.
Supervisor Haig, she's back in here now. Come up to the microphone.
Almost got away scot-free, right?
Sorry about that. I think it's just important that we realize, along with the courthouse security, that there is a movement to move departments that are not courthouse dependent. So if you have been already asked to potentially move, would that cost your department a total in lost production potentially, or?
Well, my biggest concern about moving us out of the courthouse is we are an extremely active walk-in traffic office, and we also do work with other county departments. Obviously, the treasurer's office each day with our deposits. We work in conjunction with the clerk of court's office. Many days, someone will come into our office to get a birth record and then go up to the fourth floor to fill out a passport application. We did a study last year or 2 years ago, and on most days we average anywhere from 50 to 70 people walking in our office, especially in the vitals department. So my concern is if we were moved, say, over to the Otter Street building, which is beautiful, nice facility, but if we were on the third or fourth floor or something like that, it would be much more difficult for the public. Plus, we'd be sending them back and forth between buildings. That's my concern. Our concern is mainly the customer service aspect of it.
I think during the last courthouse security meeting, the district attorney identified some space available in the adjacent building. Did he suggest that the clerk of courts, the Register of Deeds department be moved into that building just for proximity issues?
That I can't answer, I don't know.
Okay.
If you're talking about the building that currently houses the veterans,
I think he said that there was one floor, maybe the first floor of that building, that only had maybe a handful of employees there. And
he's probably talking about Orrin King.
That's correct. So is there potentially room in the Orrin King building for Register of Deeds where that would be closer to what we're talking about here instead of potentially moving Register of Deeds to the Otter Street building?
Mike would have to answer.
Yeah,
that.
I think
He
that would
knows
be a
more
difficult
about space
fit.
than anybody else.
That'd be a difficult fit, and even if you could fit in there, you certainly would have to move corporate counsel out of that building.
Another consideration would be the genealogists and the title searches that go on in our office. We have public areas. Right now we have 9 workstations that are utilized every day. by genealogists and the title companies. So we would need space for those people as well, in addition to the counter traffic for issuing birth certificates and recording deeds.
Sure. Thank you. I appreciate your answers.
You're welcome.
Okay, now we're going to flip-flop back to where we left off on page 288. We'll go to the airport.
288.
So the start of the airport budget is on 289. The chart of employees is on page 293. There's 7 full-time employees and 1 part-time employee, the same as last year. And the summary of significant changes is on page 294. Peter Mall is in the back to take any questions.
Supervisor Rowe.
Mr. Chairman. Openness, accountability, and honesty define government transparency. In a free society, transparency in governments is government's obligation to share information with its citizens. It is at the heart of how citizens hold their public officials accountable. So let's talk for just a couple of minutes about transparency, or in this case, the lack of transparency. First of all, I honestly believe that all 36 supervisors feel government should be open and accountable. On the other side of the coin, 2 years ago, at an aviation committee meeting, the airport director stated, quote, "Transparency scares me." Several people at that meeting were aghast, yet he repeated that transparency scares me. 1 year ago, during the last budget session, 9 of the 36 supervisors, that's 25% of you, and I have watched the video and audio. It was Supervisors Wingren, Widener, Fari, Hardy, Eisen, Hamlin, Haig, Egan, and Thompson that had questions of the airport director and its 2014 airport budget. Many of those questions dealt with the dramatic reduction of revenue for land rental / truck storage. We were told of contracts between the federal government and Oshkosh Corporation coming to a close. While that budget showed a $300,000 reduction in revenue, we were told if the number of trucks was dramatically reduced, that revenue reduction number could be even higher. Fast forward to the Aviation Committee meeting 2 months ago. There I learned that not only has the number of trucks declined, but the amount we receive per truck has been reduced from $1.50 per truck per day to a flat $20 a month. Later that day, I reviewed the video from October 29th of 2013. During those discussions about the number of trucks being reduced, we were never told, oh, and the rate per truck per month is being cut from $45 to $20. At 1:59 p.m. that afternoon, this comment was made, and I quote, "The vehicle renters are on a per vehicle per day basis, or they have been in the past," unquote. I guess we should have picked up on that at that time. Unfortunately, we didn't. It would have been so much cleaner if we had been told, in addition to the number of trucks declining, the rate is also being cut in half. The sad part here is I have copies of invoices from Winnebago County to Oshkosh Corporation showing the new reduced rate took effect 2 days, yes, 2 days after that budget session. On September 5th, 2014, I sent an email to Chuck Ornstein
It reads, quote, "At the Aviation Committee meeting earlier this week, I found out the county has a new contract/agreement with Oshkosh Corporation, which reduced the truck rental from $1.50 per truck per day to a flat $20 per truck per month. Do you have or can you get a copy of that contract/agreement?" Unquote. 18 minutes later, I received this reply, and I quote, "I don't have a copy of it. Did you check with Peter Mall?" Unquote. My response to Chuck was, quote, "Should there be one? What if there is not?" Unquote. I got 2 final emails from Chuck. The first one said, quote, "Just talk to Peter. I'm going to let him reply to this," unquote. And the final note from Chuck to me was, quote, "Oh, and yes, there should be a written agreement. I suspect there is not," unquote. My first email to Peter read, quote, "Good morning, Peter. Would you please scan a copy of the new agreement/contract between the county and Oshkosh Corporation with respect to vehicle storage? In fact, please send me the old contract and the new. Thank you," unquote. Sometime later, I received this from Peter, and I quote, "Attached is the original agreement we made with Oshkosh Corporation for the storage of government-owned vehicles. This agreement was not updated in 2013 when the rates were renegotiated," unquote. Therefore, there is no new agreement with Oshkosh Corporation for the reduced rate. In fact, if you could see this document, no one for the county or Oshkosh Corporation has signed this agreement dated October 1st, 2008. So you see, we had no signed contract, and we have nothing for the new agreement. My next email to Peter was, quote, "Do you have a signed copy for the 2008 document?" unquote. His reply to me was, quote, "No, we do not have a signed copy. This was sent to Oshkosh Corporation, but to date, 6 years later, we've not received a signed copy from them." I hope and pray today's responses will be more forthright. Mr. Chairman, at this time, I have no questions.
Supervisor Eisen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question for Airport Director, Mr. Mall. One of the objectives for the airport for the new year is to find alternative revenue sources so that the airport department can maintain its self-sufficiency in funding to minimize the impact upon the levy. My question is, what are we doing to seek these alternative revenue sources?
Okay, there are a number of things we're trying to do at the airport. Number one, we have the new airport business park. We are currently seeking tenants for that area. We do have one new tenant who has moved onto the airport, is in temporary facilities leasing from Basler Flight Service, which we get revenue from them for that operation. However, until we get something to offset the Oshkosh Corp revenue that we've steadily decreased, at this point we don't have much of anything. Obviously we look for new sources of revenue all the time, non-revenue, non-aeronautical and aeronautical revenue. So it's a continuous struggle that most airports across the country are enduring the same thing. It's a constant struggle for all of us. So.
And a follow-up question, Mr. Mall, that I have is our neighbor to the north, Outagamie County, has a commercial airport, and the last that I had seen is that they generate anticipate generating $23 million worth of revenue. Their expenses are in the nature of $18 million, so they're going to have another $6 million transfer over to their $88 million airport fund. Has there ever been any discussion or inquiry as to a possible partnership with Outagamie County Airport? Because it would seem to me that this would be a hand-in-glove situation. We have a superior private, small private airport arrangement, certainly with an anchor in the EAA, International Class event. Also, the expansion and promise of the airport industrial park. It would seem to me if we could combine the strengths of our focus and the strengths of Outagamie County focus, we could have a very fine regional operation.
Well, you're on the right track. Actually, that's one of the points of the Chamco Aviation Business Park Committee. Been working on a joint operation or a joint marketing effort between Winnebago County, Outagamie County, and Fond du Lac County. There are some businesses that'll fit well in Oshkosh. There are some businesses that would probably fit better in Appleton, some would fit better in Fond du Lac. So as we're marketing, we're talking with these companies, making sure that what they want to do or what we want them to do would fit in with our airport first, obviously. If not, we'll pass them on to Outagamie County or Fond du Lac County for possibly a better fit. And conversely, Outagamie County is doing the same thing too. They've had businesses approach them, but maybe a better fit in Winnebago County. So they're sending those our way too. So it's a cooperative effort that we are working with that airport.
Well, I would make a reference to the solid waste department, Brown County, Outagamie County, Winnebago County agreement, and the facility, the materials recovery facility that was created and constructed in Outagamie County as a prime example of cooperation between county governments. And I would think that with the strength that's been exhibited from the Outagamie County commercial operation and the strength and prestige that's attributed to the Whitman Airport operation, that this would be a good road to and I'm glad to hear that there are efforts exploring that idea. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Knitsky.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Wall, at our last aviation committee, I asked you about how the new temporary $10,000 air conditioning unit was being, how was it reforming? We voted down the $90,000 for doing the whole tower, and you said you'd get back to me on this before our next meeting. Will you fill us in on how that, what the expertise of Mr. Elder were able to work, and how is it working, and where are we at that with that temporary, or is it now going to be a permanent fixture air conditioning unit?
We are working with the Property and Facilities Committee and the department actually on the some possibilities of whether it's going to be a permanent attachment or it's going to be a temporary temporary operation for the tower. We don't have any answers yet, unfortunately. It takes a while to study that. What's going to be the best economic outcome for us? So I guess I hope to have some numbers maybe before our meeting next week, and I'll see what I can do. If not, I'll get with Mike again, and we'll find an answer for the committee. But.
Supervisor Farley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First question for Chuck Orenstein. I'm looking at page 295. Total expenditures submitted for the airport is a little over $3 million. You list levy adjustments of $2 million. I assume that's revenue. Then you have, you took 50 grand out of the fund balance to buy down the levy. And then you have $1,439,000 back out depreciation to reduce the levy. Would you explain that, please?
Well, depreciation is not a cash flow item. There's no money going out. So as a result, we don't levy for that. We do levy for capital expenditures, which normally, on a typical income statement, they're capitalized and depreciated. Mm-hmm. So that's just an adjustment we do to get to the levy. We're trying to come up with how much money is needed to operate. And because depreciation isn't a cash outlay, we don't need to levy for that.
So you put a line item to decrease the levy?
No, pardon me? If what?
Pardon me?
I missed your question.
I just see it as a negative number here to reduce the levy. Basically what it's doing.
Well, it's basically subtracting it off the income statement because it's not a cash expenditure.
Okay.
So the levy without it would be $2,196,000, but depreciation is not a cash outlay, so that drops it down to roughly $700,000.
So
Okay, well,
the
I'm not sure I
depreciation is
understand
in the depreciation is in the expenses up above, but because it's not a use of cash, you have to back it out of that figure to find out how much cash you need to raise in the levy.
Okay, then if I might too, somewhat follow up on Mr. Rowe's comments. And I'll address this question to either executive or the finance director. Obviously, there was an agreement with Oshkosh Truck that had a contract from 2006, I believe you stated? 8? And then that contract, assuming it was approved by this board, has been adjusted, perhaps multiple times, without board approval? Tell me, gentlemen, how does that happen?
The executive has the right to make one-year contracts on his own. I'm not blaming it on him, but I'm just saying.
Yeah.
So you, as the executive, approved the actions of the director of the airport?
No, I was actually unaware of the change until after the last budget, but I do approve of the change because what the agreement was that as the inventory of trucks was going to decrease, that if we were willing to cut our rate, we would be the last one to lose our inventory. And I understand that it was Peter's judgment that that would maximize our revenues by being the last one to lose the inventory of trucks. So I approve of what he did. I was unaware of that at the last budget. However, I do feel it should have been committed to a signed and written agreement, that it shouldn't have just been basically a handshake agreement.
Which is normal government policy.
I would agree with that. I will say, however, though, that we have in fact been paid on what essentially amounted to a handshake agreement. So in retrospect, no harm done, but it really should have been committed to writing at the time that it was done and signed by both sides. But in some sense, no harm, no foul, because we have in fact been paid for the rental of space for those trucks. And you know, obviously that's been an enormous source of revenue to us over the years that we've stored those vehicles. And I don't think it was any secret. I think we discussed each year that it was always a possibility that that source of revenue could go away.
I understand that, and I think we all do as board members. We knew that was declining. They've been looking for other storage facilities throughout the county. I'm very much aware of that. My concern is the procedure and the lack of oversight. And if such things are allowed to happen, we create chaos. We create fraud. We can create all kinds of things without that oversight, either by yourself or by this board.
I agree that there should have been a written
I hope
agreement.
you take the appropriate actions to make sure it don't happen again.
However, contracts of 1 year or less by our rules don't require board approval.
But they do require your approval.
I should be aware of them?
Yes.
Yes, and they should be in writing.
Enough said, thank you.
Supervisor Haig.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In regards to that amount to decrease the fund balance, $50,000 that Mr. Fari identified, what is the current airport fund balance?
It's projected at the end of this year to be about 1.44 million. That's on page 48.
Say that again, the number.
It's projected to be about 1,448,000 at the end of this year.
So with that said, how was the determination made to decrease the fund balance by $50,000?
Well, we pretty much decided just to do the same thing we did last year, which was 50.
And
that's all that we based it on.
With that said, revenues have decreased by over 30% this year. How much did revenue decrease last year?
Are you speaking from 2012 to 2013? That would be on page 296, and 2012 land rental was $1,497,000. 2013 actual was $739,000, so it looks like it got cut about in half from 2012 to 2013.
And that's the total revenue?
That's land rental, not the whole department revenue, just land rental.
I'm just looking on page 297 under revenue total.
Okay, but if you go to 296, I think the rental related to the storage of the military vehicles is part of land rental airport in 45059 account on page 296.
Okay. So with that said, I guess what we need to ask ourselves here is that $50,000 adjustment, is that significant enough to offset the decrease in revenue? I'm looking at a line 53505 on page 299, promotions airport. It looks like over the course of the last 4 years, we've spent approximately $225,000 on airport promotions. What has that delivered to the airport? What significant, what anything has that $225,000 in promotions generated?
Those expenditures on promotions and marketing get our name out worldwide through the Aviators TV program, through our website, through social media. It's helped immensely, especially now with starting of the marketing for the aviation business park. I mean, we've got a number of customers that we're approaching that have indicated they've seen us on social media, they've seen us on the Aviators TV. It's a name recognition, basically. Part of that also is education of the local citizenry who believe that EA owns the airport. Not true, obviously. So it's all, there may be no tangible benefits that you can see, but from a standpoint that our name recognition is better than it has been in years, I think that says a lot right there.
Okay. Well, I try to get to the aviation committee meetings, and I certainly understand that educating the public in general about the general aviation airport is a topic of conversation. In fact, at one recent meeting, one of the supervisors did a nice job with the presentation in regards to marketing the airport, educating the public through some different means that individual thought were significant. So when I look at these numbers, and it seems to me we're still having the same questions about marketing and education, I don't see a tangible result for those expenditures. And then this year, I see an increase in that expenditure by over 20%. So that raises a question. I also see a couple lines of increased maintenance and repairs. Line 54020 on page 299 is an increase of about $30,000, 132%. Building repairs under contractual services are up about 17,000, or about 68%. What are those expenditures?
Those are expenditures we're planning on upgrading some of our hangars, new paint, new electrical installation in some of them. That money actually was transferred. We didn't spend any extra money other than transferring it from our field maintenance to the building maintenance for those hangars. So.
Okay, so that's not further investing in the current terminal administrative building?
No.
Okay. And then one of the next lines down, 55019, there's $10,000 in the executive budget for architect and engineering. Is that to further develop plans as identified in 2015 goals and objectives number 10 to continue design and funding options for potential terminal replacement?
No, that architect engineering fees or costs are typical money we put in every year when we work with Omni Associates on airport layout plan changes, design work for new hangar development, that sort of thing. It doesn't apply to the terminal.
Didn't Omni do a preliminary design though already on a new administrative terminal building?
Yes, they did. That was part of another project with the airport layout plan update.
What line item is that?
That was a capital project.
Oh. Okay, and that
Large capital.
that money in that capital project fund was spent entirely through?
Yes, that was 90% funded by the FAA, 5% from the State Bureau of Aeronautics, and 5% from Winnebago County.
So I guess that's the big question then lastly is in regards to the goals and objectives number 10. Where are we at? And I kind of know the answer to that just by going to the meetings and going to the last joint meeting between aviation and facilities and property management. But are we still potentially looking at a building that will incorporate another car rental, et cetera, et cetera? It just seems like airport usage is going down. Activity at the airport is going down, and we have a lot of money that we're spending on marketing. I'm just not seeing a benefit or a tangible result in the money that we're spending there, and we need to do something with that building that's out there sooner than later. I understand that, but What direction are we headed with the airport?
Well, I think you have to look at the big picture, first of all. Aircraft activity and airport activity all across the country is going down. Because of the economy in the last few years, I think we've seen a marked decrease overall across the country. Things are starting to pick up a little bit here and there. But overall, we're still the busiest general aviation airport in the state of Wisconsin. If you want to compare us to Appleton, fine. We've got twice as much air traffic as they've got. And they've got commercial airline service. You know, we're doing our best to bring people here 365 days a year. We've got 12 corporate aircraft based in the airport who use the airport on a daily basis. We've got 163 based aircraft on the airport, people who fly for recreation, fly for business. They're there on the weekends, a lot of nights after work, they're out flying. During the summer, obviously, it's a lot more activity than during the winter. So a new terminal is obviously going to save us money on the utility costs. We're at $100,000 right now on utility costs for the existing terminal, and we're at $15,000 to $20,000 in revenue. Obviously, we're losing money on that. We have to do something. We are doing something. We'll be sending out an RFP for other designs. We don't want to rely solely on Omni. They may be ultimately the final contracted firm to design the terminal. We don't know. But this way, you know, we'll have some other ideas. Possibly there's a design out there that's going to cost us less than what Omni would charge us, or cost to build rather. So we're still working in toward the direction of making sure that we've got the right size building for the right operations, and we want to do this right the first time.
Right, and I applaud that philosophy. I've heard that term used quite a bit now, the right size. And I don't know if that came from Next Gen or not, but I've heard that. Maybe Chris used it, I don't know, but.
It came from me, actually.
Was it
the first
Did it come
meeting?
from you?
Yeah.
Okay, good. I appreciate that. I guess in some instances, I'm not quite sure what that means, but.
We still have lots of questions. That's why it's been a slow process. And would we like to speed it up? Absolutely. But until we get the answers that we want and need, you know, we'll continue on.
What line item is your snow plowing under?
That's generally under, well, it's spread out among field maintenance. It's not a separate line item. There's fuel involved in there and wages. So it's split out.
Okay, I just asked because that was, as minor as it might seem, that was one of my pet peeves last winter. When I'd go to the meetings, I would notice that entire parking lot out there was continually plowed snowfall after snowfall when, you know, maybe there's half a dozen, 8, 10 cars out there parked. And I'm just hoping that we can reduce, you know, wherever that is. I would like to see it better identified. I see it better identified in other budgets, but I'm hoping that we can use that more wisely this year.
But I think when you talk about the plowing of the parking lot, we have to understand that not every day is going to be a busy day at the terminal. We've had some meetings where we've had that parking lot full. We've had people use that as drop-off point for passengers on Greyhound buses. Obviously, Hertz has a significant business there. Basler Flight Services, when they've had numerous corporate aircraft come in, the western part of the parking lot's been full. I've seen it even in the wintertime. So as a public service, we have to keep that parking lot open.
And in regards to, lastly, in regards to the statement I heard from the county executive about no harm, no foul, I'm not sure that I could really disagree anymore, and I agree with Mr. Fari in regards to his comments, but Mr. Mull, would you pledge to this board that the issue that has been identified here will not happen again?
Yes. It's a mistake on my part. You know, I understand that. I'll admit that. I could have done better, absolutely.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay, we'll take the next questions after lunch. We are gonna move now to adjourn until 1:30. And the students will be back here for about 10 minutes to answer some questions. Pardon? We're going out to the Elks on Packer for lunch. Those of you that are joining us for lunch, we're going out on Packer to the Elks Club.
The Winnebago County Board is currently in a break. Please stay tuned for continued coverage. For broadcast times of local government meetings, check our website at oshkoshcommunitymedia.org. You're watching City Cable 10, your source for government programming in the Oshkosh area. Simulcast on 101.9 FM WOCT and streamed on the World Wide Web at oshkoshcommunitymedia.org.